Hello, computer science students. Welcome back to another video in our Advanced Class Concepts series. We're going to continue talking about static. I talked a little bit about creating a static variable and how it changes and updates with students being changed and updated. How the keyword static really means this belongs to the class, not to a particular object from the class. And any object from the class that updates this will update it for all objects in the class. And we're going to talk about a couple good uses and improper uses of static. And in my experience, this is some of the most common use of static, is what we'll discuss here in the organization class. And some of the common misuses of static we'll talk about here as well. So, diving in, this is our organization class. There's a bunch of code to look at. So if you've downloaded it, I'd encourage you to read through your starter code and try to get an idea of what's going on. I'm going to do a really quick perusal here. For organizations, all organizations.elon have a name, and it's going to have an array list of members. So as members are added or dropped, they're stored in this array list that updates. And then this is the part where we're going to use static. And so I'm going to slow down and stop for a second here. So this combination of keywords, public, static, final, is a pretty popular combination of keywords. And let's talk about what all this implies. So public means that the integer I'm about to see here, academic type, is visible and accessible by anyone. Right? So in my tester class, which is not my organization class, I can reference academic type, club sports type, government type, Greek type, honors type, no type. I can access all these variables directly because they're public. And if we glance back over at our code over here, you'll see that when, for example, I create the CS Club, it has the name CS Club. It's going to have a president who is a student using the student class we created before. And it has an organization.academic type. So organization is the name of my organization class, and then .academic type. There are no parentheses here. If there are no parentheses, that means I'm referring to a field. And so I'm referring to this variable directly, which is actually storing the number 100, but it doesn't really matter. It's just an academic type organization. And so we're going to move on here. This being public means that we can refer to it here in line 51. Static means that it is the same for all organization objects. This is a unique static thing. And actually, what it allows us to do is, normally if we wanted to reference a variable or call a method, we would have to create, like if we created an organization called CS Club, then we could do something like CS Club dot academic type and set it to something, right? Or we could do CS Club dot set name or CS Club dot get name or whatever. But since academic type is static, it does not require an object to be present, right? Static means it belongs to the class. It does not belong to an object. Therefore, it does not need an object to be created before it can be used. And so that keyword static allows us to do this part. Organization dot. That means that I'm taking the class and getting a variable from it, right? So static belongs to a class. We can now use the class name dot variable name. So this pattern, static variable referred to by class name dot method name or dot field name or whatever you want to look up or use, static allows us to access this based on just using the class name. So public, I can access it. Static controls how I can access it. And then final says that once this is declared or initialized, like it is in line 18, it cannot be changed anymore. So I can reference this, but I can't change it. So put all three of these types together, and what kind of variable do you get? Well, you get one that people can see, that they can access without creating an object, and that cannot change. So what it really does is it defines, it sets like a definition out there for any organizations to use. So if you think about, putting it back into realistic perspectives, um, let's say we have academic clubs, we have sports clubs, we have government clubs, we have Greek clubs, we have honors clubs, and we have undefined type clubs. Well, if we want people to use standard typings for these and make decisions based on the type of club you are, then we need a system to refer to these. And so this is a good way, or a reasonable way, to define a system for referring to these. We assign an integer value for each type of club, and then we make it permanent. We make it final, and we make it so that everybody can see it. And so these numbers don't end up mattering that much. If you look at my code over here, the way that these should be used is you should just say organization.academic type. You should never have to know that the value here is actually 100. All you should know is that there is a defined academic type organization, and when I create an organization and I want it to be academic, well, I just do this, organization.academic type. When I want to create a club sports team, I do organization.clubsports, and when I want to make a Greek type team, I do organization.Greek type. So anytime that you create an organization, you can reference these values and use these values, and they'll be standard across all organizations. So that's a really good use of static. This line, private static int type, is not a good use of static. We'll spend another video talking about that. Let's see, the organization class, when you create an organization, it has to have a name, a president, and a type. And so for this type, it takes in an integer, and the proper way of setting the type here is to use one of these static variables to define the type. And so when I create it over here, we use one of the static variables to define the type. We can set name and get name for organization. We can set the president, get the president. We can set the type, get the type. And then we'll talk about exceptions in another future video, what that means and how this works. You can get the members, you can add members, you can remove members, and so this allows us to define how organizations can operate. So hopefully this little introduction to the object organization class and this discussion about how static can be used in combination with other keywords is helpful. And hopefully you see that public static final helps us define common rules or typings across multiple objects. So in the next class, in the next video here, we're actually going to get to a little bit of coding and a little bit of actually reading code and doing things. So a little bit less discussion, a little bit more doing stuff. But the discussion part is important here, so I wanted to spend some time. And I'll see you guys next time.